I also have a pretty strong belief in what it means to be a consultant and what consulting means. And it's very much people and process first. And in my space, the software comes, third or last, or at least second. And so I think that's gotten lost with the SaaS boom, if you will, and folks thinking everything's plug and play, right? I'm going to be able to download this and it's going to work for me and my business is going to be better. And the reality is, at least for the products we're working with, we work with the Salesforce platform. It's just not the case. You could sell it as easy and intuitive and those things, but ultimately these projects are about the people and process that software is supporting. And so I think customers need that actual advice, and they need to be guided through the process and guided through the change, and faster is not always better. So I think I have that brand of consulting that I want to teach and train others on, as well as, bring to the software community.
Yeah.
Business as usual is changing constantly, right? And we're not going back and making those updates. But I will say the way we start with customers, quite frankly, it comes much before the kickoff, right? Before the project team really hits the ground. It's in the sales process. It's setting the expectation of, this is what this is going to like. This is what this is going to require of your team, require of your business. This is the change, you need to embrace. And I think often I'll have conversations with customers that, the software is great. We work with a very flexible, adaptable software, configurable. We don't even have to introduce code 9 times out of 10. That's fantastic. We can send you the moon, right? But organizations will ask for things that they're not ready to absorb, or they haven't considered, what is it going to take? What kind of people? Do we have the right people in the right roles? Do we have the right people in our company, right? Are we going to need to go out and hire for that role? We can say we have people with titles, but a lot of times these implementations that we're looking at require organizations to take a hard look at their team. And I'm not saying they have to let them all go or anything like that, but it does require going, okay, how much change can we absorb, being honest in that way? And also what's the amount of pivot and transformation we can actually take on? And if we want to do more, we might have to make some hard decisions here. So those conversations, I like to have them early and often, and kind of normalize that discussion and make it, more thoughtful than reactive, or it dawning on the organization as they're going live that, oh shoot, we're trying to train these people and they're not the right people in this role,
Yeah.
Quite eclectic. I think most folks will take a look at me and think I came from kind of a cookie cutter family in the suburbs. Part of that's true. But I like to describe my family as, we look like we got met on a cruise ship. So I have some older siblings from my dad's first marriage that are quite a bit older, and they're half Japanese, and my dad is half Venezuelan. So we all just kind of look a little bit different. My sister is probably 6 inches shorter than me, and dark straight hair and Asian eyes and stuff. So the dinner table was always kind of, I don't know, you look around, and to me that's kind of what we see in business today. That's what I would see at school. It's like not everybody looks the same. So
no, that's great. So how many siblings did you have?
I have 4. I have 3 brothers and a sister. Yep.
Very cool. And now, were you exposed to any type of entrepreneurialism or any exposure to business growing up at all?
A bit, and probably in a few different ways. So my dad is a software engineer, and retired software engineer, but he had his own business and kind of doing like 1099 type work, doing custom software development. So actually in a kind of payroll space, and I'm in the ERP space now, so we can talk shop a bit. But he had that company for a good 10 years in my childhood. So I remember him working from home really before working from home was a thing. And then I guess we were just raised with a really strong work ethic. I mean, we all, for better or worse, right? But we all got jobs as soon as we could, as soon as we were of age to do so. And in fact, I can remember I was babysitting at like 9 years old, and the neighborhood kids and stuff like that. So we were always kind of encouraged and to make our own way and do our own things.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned for better or worse. Do you feel like there's a detriment there? There's what's the worst part?
Well, I mean, I think there can be, and I think I personally have done a good job of the work-life balance
Hmm.
and trying to mix business and pleasure where I can, and that works for me and for my lifestyle. And, some people need to just completely shut down and disconnect for a few weeks at a time. But I always found in my consulting career that I could kind of tack on a few days to a trip and get to
Hmm.
see friends and family, and you get your airline miles and your hotel points and things. So I feel like I have that balance. But I've also seen, and I saw my dad was a sole provider and worked a lot,
Yeah.
had to work
Yeah.
all the time, and gave us a great life. But it does come at a cost and stress, right? And
Yeah.
that stress carries itself into the home. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Being a workaholic is seems to be a tendency that most of us entrepreneurs have. So,
Yeah.
but
Well, when you're passionate about something, right? You enjoy it. It's part
yeah.
of you.
Yeah, sure, sure. So did you go to university? Did you go to college? Did you
Yes.
do,
Yeah. University
and
of Florida.
oh, very
Hmm.
cool, very cool. And were
Go
you
Gators.
what were you studying when you went to college?
So I studied business administration and psychology.
Okay.
I didn't really want to be necessarily a therapist, but that was always something that interested me. And
Hmm.
I was not a particularly, I was a good student in terms of grade point average. I'm a good test taker. That's about it. But
Hmm.
I just didn't have an interest in school. I wanted to just get out in the real world, and I don't know. I
Yeah.
didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have like a specific vision then or idea in mind, but I just kind of felt like, I mean, I grew up in Florida and I was learning about manufacturing in business school.
Hmm.
Not a lot of manufacturing in
In
Florida, so it was
Florida,
so
you're
hard
right.
to relate to,
Yeah.
it just didn't seem like it was going to be relevant for me. I had a great time in college, but I think the psychology part was the part of the topic and the studying that I could do that interested me in
Hmm.
that aspect. But I got my 4-year degree and then kind of thought, oh, I'll go get a master's, I'll do the MBA program. And my parents, I had a full ride scholarship to University of Florida. My parents basically said if I stayed in the state of Florida and went to university there, then they would pay for me to go anywhere else
Hmm.
for my graduate degree. And they outsmarted me on that one. So I knew it would be kind of a waste for me to go immediately, or I felt like for me it would be a waste to go immediately into grad school. So I moved up to the DC area and got started on my career. And then, of course, by the time I thought about going back to school, I wasn't going to ask my parents for the money for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So they got off easy on that one in
Yeah.
some respects.
That's funny. So when did you get your first jump into starting your own company, starting your own business?
Yeah. Yeah. So I honestly wasn't someone that had that in mind for myself. I didn't
Hmm.
really think I would want to have my own business. And for me, I I don't think I ever wanted to go the like 1099 route. I didn't see that just one person going in, doing a project and walking away.
Yeah.
So to me, being an entrepreneur and starting my own company would mean employees and team members and scaling and growing. And I managed to dodge managerial roles throughout my career here and there. It's always something I was like, I don't think I'm very good at that. So I just like to be that individual contributor. So I think for me, it wasn't something that was on my mind to particularly do. And I had a colleague of mine that basically I'd started a practice for my former employer, started a practice there and kind of got my feet wet with that. And he kind of talked me into it. and,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, and yeah, I think once it took me a couple of years to really kind of figure out my why and where I guess where I get the enjoyment of all of it from. I
Hmm.
like something fast paced, sure, and that can always be a distraction from kind of why do you do this? But um, it was a couple of years in that I guess it just kind of dawned on me that I feel like my contribution to the world is to create an environment where people can thrive and they can thrive in their work lives. They can be challenged. They can be, have fun, right? Get
Hmm.
along with their
Hmm.
coworkers and have a healthy environment there where they feel safe and trusted and that they can trust others. And how we can grow and scale that. And then when those folks go home, they're better wives, husbands, friends,
Yeah.
brothers, sisters. You know what I mean? Like, can't control all the aspects, but if I can contribute to that kind of work life satisfaction, then that's the goal. That's what I'm
Yeah.
here to do.
That's great. So it sounds like, so when a lot of entrepreneurs start out, they have an idea of something that they want to build or create, right? Would you say that you sort of attached more to the idea of creating this, like you called environment, culture, what have you, of people working in the same direction or on the same type of project, and that's really really what you sort of focused on, or that you latched onto?
Yeah, I think I latched onto that, and I think it started with, what do I know? My domain expertise, and I've been consulting in the ERP space and SaaS implementations my entire career. So that's obviously what I can sell, what I could deliver in the early
Yeah.
days, what I could mentor people on and hire for, right? That it's kind of all I know. So I think that's the path. That's why we have, why we went in the services direction. I also have a pretty strong belief in what it means to be a consultant and what consulting means. And it's very much people and process first. And in my space, the software comes, third or last, or at least second. And so I think that's gotten lost with the SaaS boom, if you will, and folks thinking everything's plug and play, right? I'm going to be able to download this and it's going to work for me and my business is going to be better. And the reality is, at least for the products we're working with, we work with the Salesforce platform. It's just not the case. You could sell it as easy and intuitive and those things, but ultimately these projects are about the people and process that software is supporting. And so I think customers need that actual advice, and they need to be guided through the process and guided through the change, and faster is not always better. So I think I have that brand of consulting that I want to teach and train others on, as well as, bring to the software community.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about what it is that you guys do. Like, someone has I know that you're in ERP, or you help design ERP systems, but what types of problems, I guess, can you say that most people would come to you, with, that complaint? What is it typically that you guys are solving?
We're solving trust issues and visibility. And I think where folks, they don't trust the data, either because they don't have access to it, they can't see it, it's being manipulated in spreadsheets, and they have too many conversations. We've all been there, of like, instead of talking about what to do with the numbers, you're talking about, are the numbers accurate or not? And my spreadsheet says this and yours says that, and those kinds of things. So I think it is, if I had to really kind of boil it down, it's the trust in the data, the trust in the people delivering it, and that the systems are accurate. I think too, where there's a lot of manual handoffs. So within an individual function, so within sales, within support, within finance, there can be quite a bit of automation in many cases, and things work pretty well. But as soon as you've got to have that handoff between sales and finance, or services and finance, all of a sudden it's this back and forth, and there isn't visibility into what the other side is, seeing, or what they're doing with that information. So you don't know why you need to deliver it, and all of those kinds of silos, breaking those down, I think, is where we can really help customers.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. You with your process, I'm assuming that one of the most common questions that everybody asks is, where do we start? How do we start something like this? Because a lot of times I'm assuming that these are older companies and they already have a process that's established. How do you start your projects? How do you, start explaining that process of what this is going to look like?
Absolutely. So I will say it's not specifically older companies and established companies. A lot of times we're helping organizations, especially in this time of acquisitions and private equity. There's a lot of small companies that get investments and they blow up, right? So they raise that money, and now all of a sudden they don't have the platforms to support, adding 100 people, 500 people over the course of 6 to 12 months, right? So we have customers that end up, I'll say, broken because of that. Others are just, on antiquated systems and systems that don't talk to each other, not putting in the investment to continue to adjust and adapt your software to your current needs and current
Mhm.
requirements. It's
Mhm.
not a one and done. We talk about things like reporting, where it's very much, it's always evolving. You're not just creating one report and you're done. You're going to have new reporting requirements tomorrow and the next day. And so you've got to continue to evolve those systems. So I think customers kind of, hey, we implemented it, we're live, and then business as usual. But then business as usual is changing constantly, right?
Mhm.
And we're not going back and making those updates. But I will say the way we start with customers, quite frankly, it comes much before the kickoff, right? Before the project team really hits the ground. It's in the sales process.
Mhm.
It's setting the expectation of, this is what this is going to like. This is what this is going to require of your team, require of your business. This is the change, you need to embrace. And I think often I'll have conversations with customers that, the software is great. We work with a very flexible, adaptable software, configurable. We don't even have to introduce code 9 times out of 10.
Mhm.
That's fantastic. We can send you the moon, right? But organizations will ask for things that they're not ready to absorb, or they haven't
Mhm.
considered what is it going to take. What kind of people? Do we have the right people in the right roles? Do we have the right people in our company?
Mhm.
Right? Are we going to need to go out and hire for that role? We can say we have people with titles, but a lot of times these implementations that we're looking at require organizations to take a hard look at their team.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying they have to let them all go or anything like that, but it does require going, okay, how much change can we absorb, being honest in that way? And
Mhm.
also, what's the amount of pivot and transformation we can actually take on? And if we want to do more, might have to make some hard decisions here. So those conversations, I like to have them early and often, and kind of
Yeah.
normalize that discussion and make it, more thoughtful than reactive, or it dawning on the organization as they're going live that, oh shoot, we're trying to train these people and they're not the right people in this role.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are some of the, I guess, the common pitfalls that you've realized over the years with a company that might be looking at doing something like this, doing some type of digital
Mhm.
transformation or what have you? Um, have there been projects that have, basically completely gone by the wayside because of some issue that you've come across?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, there's probably, I don't know that there's a common theme or thread. Potentially, as I'm talking, I'll maybe lace them together. But I'm thinking of a customer of mine, and this happens quite frequently. Again, go back to everybody wants things, plug and play and quick.
Hmm.
And I'm presenting a timeline and saying, oh, it's going to take, 2 weeks or so. Our methodology is such that it is allowing for you to introduce that change management and execute on that plan, right? It's not
Hmm.
just about configuring the software. So it's kind of intentional not to move too quickly. And and I'm not talking years, I'm talking like 16 weeks, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's always that, can we do it faster? Can we do it in 12 weeks or, whatever? And it's interesting because I think at least 80% of the time, those folks pushing us to go faster cannot, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's a bit of a game of chicken, right? Well, we can do it. Our
Yeah.
job's the easy part. We'll get the requirements, we'll configure the software, we'll train you on it. You've got to change your organization. And I think that's where I've seen customers, I'm thinking of one in my mind that literally pushed me and wanted to do it in like 8 weeks.
Hmm.
It's taken them 2.5 years.
Hmm.
Like, and they really haven't dropped the project. It's just, and it's not the software. The software is built and configured. They just, well, we'll roll out one pilot project and we'll, only launch to this group. And it's just dragged on and on
Yeah.
and on. And in that whole while, their business has changed more than once.
Yeah.
Leadership has changed over, right? So it's very hard to kind of, there's a sweet spot in there. You've got to take enough time to do it right, but at the same time, trying to aim for perfection is a never-ending battle, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one thing I guess is coming to mind immediately. I think also just not appreciating the systems we're implementing, the amount of revenue a company is running through the system. It's a big deal. Take your
Hmm.
time, make sure it's done right, and first impressions mean everything. So when we're rolling the software out, you want it to be a wow factor and not something that, oh, well, we didn't put a lot of thought into this. We thought maybe we'd try it and see if it works. And,
Hmm.
the end users are I don't know how you are, but when I get a new phone, I lose like a week of my life.
Trying to
You
figure it
know?
out and play with it.
Exactly. Or a
Yeah.
new laptop. So
Yep.
imagine these are business systems people are using in their day jobs, and they're going, I'm learning it. I don't know where to go. I don't know where to click. Like,
Yeah.
at the same time, we also have things that we could have avoided, distance we could have avoided, or we could have been more thoughtful around. So I think it's really kind of taking the time to manage the change.
Mm-hmm. Now, are there characteristics of companies that are more successful at implementing this? And what comes to mind is, if someone doesn't, someone might have a process of how they do things, but maybe there's 5 different ways that they might do the same thing, or they've got,
Mhm.
all these different small little nuances that are, baked into their path one way or the
Yeah.
other. Are those ones typically more difficult to be able to deal with, or is it, is it the ones that have the path clearly defined and it's basically done the same way every time? And there might be different silos of people
Mhm.
doing it slightly differently, but it's, I get all of this information, I do this with it, and then it passes to this one. And, people that have
Yeah.
that a little bit more clearly defined, are they easier to work with, or is it?
Um, I don't know if I'd make that statement. I think it comes down to the organizational culture and the way they make decisions and how they manage the change in the organization. I know I keep kind of going back to that, but to me, that's the biggest piece is the people side of what we're doing.
Mhm.
Um, I think sometimes we run into, and we see this a lot on the accounting side. So when we're implementing, I mean, I'm talking GL and AR, AP, right?
Mhm.
Um, a lot of accounting systems look the same. The one that we implement doesn't look like an accounting system, if you will. It does to me because I'm not an accountant and it's what I use to run my business.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's it's interesting that folks are like, well, this doesn't look like what I'm used to seeing. And so even though the process is there, and we're actually not going to transform something in maybe that individual function, it's that the change itself is just bigger and harder for them to absorb. And
Mhm.
there's folks in when we work with services companies, those guys do this for a living. They kind of get it, right?
Yeah.
You work with an accounting team, they've probably never gone through a systems implementation, right? Like it was, hey, here's your login, here's the system you're going to use. They never had to think through,
Yeah.
how can I make this process better? I'm, writing test cases and running through test scripts. It's a whole new world in and of itself, outside of just learning a new platform and dealing with the process change, right? Just even the process of implementation is new. So I do think it may not be necessarily types of companies, but it can be types of functions that I think we have to approach a little differently and realize there's a maybe understanding in some functions. Usually, sales folks, when we're implementing CRM,
Mhm.
they get it. They've probably used Salesforce before. You know what I mean? They've
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
track pipeline and opportunities. We're not actually reinventing that part of the wheel. I do think on the accounting finance side, it can be a little bit harder, and that's where we want to take more time, more hand holding. Um, again, faster is not always better there. So,
Mhm. Mhm. And if I had a business, and again, I was thinking of doing something like this, how would I know that I'm a good candidate for you guys? What would be kind of your definition of the right type of company, your
mhm.
avatar, if you will?
Yeah, so I think where we add value is where there is that level of complexity, either because we're implementing systems across the whole quote to cash process. So you're touching a lot of different functions in that. Or maybe it's the size, global scale of the organization that makes the rollout and change management plan, more complex. I
Mhm.
think that's where we can really come in and help customers. Folks that are, maybe looking for that, like I said, kind of fast and down and dirty implementation. Let's just get this thing up and running. Let us use it. Are typically ones we would shy away from, or
Mhm.
kind of say,
Mhm.
hey, maybe another partner would be a better fit for you. And at the end of the day, we just, as a community with these platforms, we need more successful customers. We need more references, right? We need a larger community of customers, and everybody wins then. So I don't mind stepping away and saying, hey, we're not the low cost provider here. We're not going to be the fastest and the cheapest. Maybe somebody else is in that business, happy to point you over there, and I hope you're successful.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other customers out there that we can help and support. And I think too, we work a lot with customers that are going through acquisition and mergers and things like that, either in the middle, sometimes they've gone through it, but haven't come together really cohesively. And now there's an initiative to really kind of become one company. And some of that can really start with systems. That can be the impetus, right? It's we'll blame the one company thing and having you change your ways on the system that we're implementing. It's kind of a sneak attack into change management there. But I think that I've seen enough of that. I understand. I've had customers where I walk in at kickoff and they've let, the executive leadership go, or my executive sponsor or something. And they're like, can you just make the decisions for a little while till we get somebody else in here? So seen a lot of that, and helps kind of guide customers going through that of, calm down, it's going to be okay, and kind of what to expect, and a little bit of therapy sessions in there as well.
Yeah. So if someone was looking to get acquired, do you have any type of metrics or anything on what having a cohesive system that allows all of the different departments or what have you speak to one another? Does that increase the value of the asset of the business? I would imagine so, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Do you have any
a lot of
thoughts on what that number might be?
I don't on the number. And I'm sure it's out there, but absolutely. And we work with customers that want to be acquired and want to move into that, or ones wanting to go IPO. That taking care of the back office and having that well-oiled machine, even if everything's not completely well-oiled, the software in place and the processes in place and the controls in place, I think lend itself to demonstrating scalability, right? Demonstrating a maturity. We take our business seriously. It's not just what we do for our customers or what we build, but we understand we need to run a smart, healthy machine here. And I think having some sophisticated systems in place and processes around that go a long way when investors are looking at them.
Yeah, very cool. Talk a little bit about your approach on building your own company and the culture side of things, and how how you find the right type of people and make sure that they mesh with the rest of the people that are already there. Talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a consultant, as my whole career, it's kind of brought in as the expert, right? And I'm not the expert in everything. So when it comes to the business, I bring in the experts. And even within the first 2 years, I hired a very senior, he's now my COO, very senior leader to come in and scale our delivery side. Like I said, I always kind of shied away from the manager part. And here we had a couple of team members, and I'm pulling my hair out, trying to sell and deliver, manage them, and brought him in to really put the systems and the operational procedures in place to support our growth and to support us scaling. And then brought in actually Kim here. We brought in Kim, senior marketing leader, right? And she has a team of people. So that helps us to, instead of having, full-time content person, full, CMO, all of that, right? It was a little overkill for us at the time. Brought Kim in and her team, and she can bring in the resources we need and also give us that strategic vision on the marketing side. Brought in a sales leader to do the same, and most recently a CFO to do the same. So to me, I'm not the expert in those areas, right? I'm good at selling what we do, and I'm good at being a consultant, but I think that has been one kind of key to success of just, I don't feel like I ever got in my own way on that one.
You
just
didn't
knowing,
try to do it yourself.
Nope, this is not me. Like, I don't even have a good time with it, right? So don't enjoy this. Let's pull somebody in who does and is really passionate about that area, their area. And I think, Doug has certainly helped me build out this culture of employee centricity, if you will. I feel like that sounds like a buzzword, but
it works.
We really, I think we spend a lot of time in recruiting and making sure that we have an organizational fit, right? There's the aptitude, sure, you can effectively test for that or figure that out. There's a ton of smart people out there. the skill set, often we're in a small community, especially on the financial versus ERP space, a smaller community of resources that know the product. So we're certainly going to have to train them on it. So we want consultants that are coming in with a little bit of consulting experience, maybe the domain experience will teach them the product, but we just don't want any egos on the team.
Yeah.
It's kind of I think a very open culture, a very trusting culture that we've built. And that takes a lot of time and energy, not only to, maintain that with current employees, but also in finding members joining the team. And really, we think about at the size we are, just one person coming in could kind of make or break that culture, if you will.
Sure.
We're very, very protective of it.
Yeah.
And if it's not the right fit, let's have this conversation. They're probably not happy either, right? And that generally becomes pretty apparent pretty early on. But we go through, in terms of kind of hiring and onboarding folks, we go through several rounds of interviews with several different people. And I've seen some different things out there on like, oh, you're taking up too much time of the candidate and this is too much. And I'm thinking, you know how expensive it is to replace a resource? Do you know, I have somebody going out on Glassdoor tarnishing the company name, like put a price on that, So I'm going, well, we asked. I haven't gotten the specific feedback. I've just read some things recently where I was like, guys, you should want more time, to get to know the company. So yeah, we go through a couple of phone interviews, always try to do that last interview in person. And we do kind of at this point, we've been kind of going for that culture fit. And then we do kind of a practical, if you will, in the final interview. So put them through a bit of a, do a mini requirements gathering session and then present back to us. And some of that's just around style, just trying to kind of feel things out. We throw up things like conflicts that have come up, right? Sometimes it's that week. It was, hey, this scenario happened. How would you have handled it? And there we're looking for, again, that mentality and that alignment in how we make decisions, right? If they're coming back with an answer, we're going, we would never want you to do that, or that's just not how we would approach the situation. Like that can be a red flag. But I think that's taking that time has served us well. And we try to bring in folks that, peers, executives, other areas, just kind of poking at the candidate to make sure we've got a good fit here and that they're going to thrive, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And how long, you mentioned before that, you've heard of other companies, having complaints that this is taking too long. How long would you say on average that you spend on a new candidate? And I imagine that probably depends on what they're being plugged into. Obviously, like an executive or leadership, that's going to take longer, but just on average.
Yeah, well, and we're pretty lean at the top. So we're hiring mostly consultants at various levels, some junior, some a little bit more senior. Generally it's probably 8 hours or so of
that's
time.
Not bad. Okay.
Right. It's not too bad. No. And we tend to move folks through, right? Yeah. It's kind of, I don't know. We've constantly been hiring. We've been in that mode, which is a great problem to have, but we're ready to make decisions, right? This isn't like, oh, we're just kind of keeping people warm or any of that. Yeah. And I understand folks, you want to know, I've been through that process. Like you just want to know if you're going to get the job or not, especially when you get really excited about it. And so we don't like to keep people kind of hanging or a lot of delays in that process most of the time. And sometimes there's candidates that it's intentionally a bit longer in that they're also, need to be wooed. Maybe they weren't looking to leave. We kind of went to them and kind of, let's feel this out, see what this could look like. In a growing company, new roles are created. And sometimes it takes a while to really, you got to interview a few different people to kind of get that idea of, that's what we're looking for in this role,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So if people want to learn more about you or your company, where would you suggest that they go?
Yeah, a couple of different places. I would say certainly for what we actually do on our website, I think for kind of getting a feel for our team would be, LinkedIn. And actually we've got a great presence on Instagram. So that's kind of our fun social channel, just kind of see what we do. We'd like to get the team together. generally they enjoy each other's company. They'll, hang out after work and after meetings and those kinds of things. We're always doing fun stuff with swag and things like that. So we'll post
Yeah.
that on Instagram. But I think I've heard actually in the past probably year or so, a couple of candidates just saying they really followed us for a little while on Instagram. And I'm like,
Interesting.
about that. Yeah. So it's not a whole lot of professional work stuff. It's more just our team and some fun stuff. But yeah, it's been interesting.
Very cool. Very cool. And what is your Instagram handle too?
VFP Consulting.
VFP. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Well, Kimberly, I'm sorry, Stephanie, this has been fantastic. We have a lot in common, and I love your approach. I love the way that you approach the complexity of bringing some of these things into new companies. So kudos to you for pulling this all together and helping usher in new ages of doing business to these different companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's been a great conversation.
I appreciate it. Thank you.